Hi golfers, Nick here from GOLFTEC Singapore. In today's video, we're going to talk about the driver. I'm going to share with you a lesson this week. This is Tessa. We've talked about her in previous weeks when we worked on her speed. She managed to break 90, so I appreciate your comments in the last video. Just saying well done to Tessa, so she does appreciate that. Now in today's video, we're going to talk about how we transformed her driver swing this week. We've been working a lot on her iron swing, trying to get her speed up, trying to change her attack angle, and trying to change her path. Now, when it comes to the driver, and this is quite a common issue that I see with a lot of golfers, that is the path comes outside in. The problem with outside in is that generally you see players that come outside in, they lose distance, they end up hitting downwards on the golf ball. Now, Tessa wasn't necessarily hitting downwards on her driver, she was actually kind of leaning back, and we're going to be playing some of the videos here so you can see her swing. You can see how in the downswing, the club gets outside, the face quite open. By the time she hits the golf ball, her weight's kind of going backwards here. So we're going to show you kind of the drills that we worked on to try and transform her swing from 6 degrees out to in. 6 degrees out to in with her driver, about 10 degrees open, so she was losing a lot of distance. So in this video, we're going to talk about the change we made and see how we got her from 6 degrees out to in to around 3 degrees into out. The issues we're going to talk about in this video are things that I see day in, day out in the bay that lead to issues with the driver. Now, the first swing I'm going to make here is kind of trying to replicate kind of what Tessa was doing in her swing. So I'm going to talk about the swing in a second. Obviously I'm going to play the video on the screen, but basically as she was swinging down, the club was outside the plane, the face was open, the kind of weight went back, and she didn't really use her hips properly, and she ended up kind of turning too much in the follow through. We talked about that in the previous lesson, but what we're going to do here is try and replicate kind of her swing here if I can. Try and replicate a ball flight as well. So we know it's about 6 degrees out in, so let's see if I can do that. So you can see my weight kind of went back there. It was about 7.8 degrees out to, and you can see kind of a weak flight out to the right. And that was the ball flight she was hitting, right? So as you can see on the screen there, face was open about 4 degrees, out to in about 8 degrees, produces a fade, loses distance. Now I managed to hit up on the ball. I mentioned earlier, a lot of people I teach, they actually hit down when they hit out to in. It's a lot harder to hit up and create distance when you're swinging from outside in. If you struggle with a slice, sometimes it's not a simple reason. There's not always just like one reason why you slice the golf, but sometimes it's a combination, and sometimes players will kind of learn to adapt. So they'll learn to adapt with the face that's open, and they'll start aiming more to the left to kind of compensate that. They'll start swinging more to the left to start compensating for that. So sometimes it's a combination of things that happen. Now in Tessa's swing, she had the face open in the downswing and the shaft quite steep. So once you're in this position, it's going to be almost too late. It's really difficult to drop this club on the inside without early extending. It's going to be very difficult for someone to close the face without letting go and releasing the handle and kind of swinging across the golf ball. So it's going to be very difficult to kind of get from a position at 5 where the face is open and the shaft is steep. Now, there's a few reasons why she was in this position, and in this lesson we worked on this quite hard. So I was trying to show some drills to try and change the club face first. But the real big difference that we made was in her body movement. So when she hit the golf ball, and I'm going to play this so you can see, at impact, her hips had moved 0 to I think 0.3 towards the target. Now we know the best players, they're going to move at least 3 inches towards the target in the downswing. So in the backswing they're going to rotate, in the downswing they're going to move their hips towards the target. This does a couple of things. So first of all, it helps me tilt my shoulders. So as I'm coming into the ball, if I move my hips forward, that's going to help me tilt my shoulders. It's also going to keep my turns a bit more closed as well. If I, in the downswing, move my hips towards the target, it's going to help me keep my turns closed so I can deliver this club from the inside. If I don't shift my hips and I just turn, that's going to bring the path across the ball, which is what we're seeing with Tessa here. So we're seeing her path come across the ball because she hasn't moved her hips and turned too much. but also she hasn't tilted her shoulders. This is why we're getting into this position. So when you're swinging 6 degrees out to in, you need the face open, otherwise that ball's going way to the left. So she kind of had these two compensating moves, the face being open and the path coming from outside to in, which leads to a loss of distance with the driver. If you've seen the previous videos with Tess, we've worked a lot on her kind of backswing and her wrist position. Now this is the first lesson we did properly here with the driver. And in this video, I was kind of trying to get her to really like exaggerate this move with her wrist. And we're trying to get her to get this club feeling like it's really flat at position 5. And I'm trying to get her to point her wrist here at the camera to keep it flexed as she comes down. So we did lots of kind of practice swings. So we actually did this without the ball to start with. So this is quite good when you're kind of practicing on your swing. You want to really try and do some practice swings. You want to try and really just start with just a tee here. So I'm trying to get her to really flex this. I was trying to get her to kind of swing to the top, kind of pause the wrist as she came down. So we did that a few times just without the ball. And then at the same time, and this is crucial when you're trying to work on something, you've actually got to get the combination of the movements right. So it's not only what you're doing with your arms and your wrist, but for her, it was also what she was doing with her hips. And this will be true for a lot of the golfers. When you see the best players, when they hit the ball with their driver, some of them will tilt back with their head, but they're driving their hips forward, moving them towards the target to create this tilt. And this is the key to get that path from inside out. The tilt to the shoulder. And if you can combine that with that club face being closed, the shaft being a bit flatter or shallower coming down, it's going to really make the difference. So practice was to swing to the top, really feel that flex, and then moving the hips towards the target in the downswing to create this tilt as she comes into the ball. So we did this lots of repetitions. Like I said, when you're working on your swing, you want to try and get the feel for this. Once we started to do the practice swings, we then started to hit some shots. And when you start to work on your swing, you've also got to kind of start off a bit slower. So we started off a little bit slower. And I think the first swing that Tessa did after we did this changed from 6 degrees out to in, I think, to 1 degree out to in. So we definitely got some improvement there. So just starting to just easily swing the club there. Now for me, I'm swinging to out. I tend to swing into out anyway. So when I start to move my hips, that's going to push it even more. So it's like 4 degrees into out. Now for Tessa, this got her to like 1 degree. Now she still had the face a little bit open. So then we talked about how we will follow through, and this is really important as well. So in her swing, she's got to feel like she's keeping this wrist flex, especially as she starts down, to get the shaft flatter, but also to keep the face closed to the path. And then my instruction was to keep that wrist flex all the way through. So even to position 8 here, where my arms are parallel to the ground, I'm trying to feel that wrist flex. You'll see how my hips have gone forward, my chest is back. So we started to really get that wrist flexing to close the face and keep that going all the way through. At the same time, I'm really trying to feel like my head almost tilts back as I move my hips forward. So I'm going to exaggerate this now. So I'm going to keep the wrist flex, hip sway, tilt coming into the ball. And when you're practicing this, you've just got to do this a bit slower. So this should be a bit flatter flight, a bit draw. You can see I just overdrew that, and that's quite good. When you're practicing, you want to overdo things, right? If you're going from slicing to change that, it's going to be difficult. So you want to be exaggerating this. You can see on the screen there, 4.5 degrees into out, 6 degrees closed. So that's complete opposite to what Tessa was doing at the start of the lesson. The practice swings and the slow swings are very important to just kind of get your head around the changes and the kind of the movements of the body, the shoulders as you come down, what the arms are doing, what the wrist is doing. And then towards the end of the lesson, we started to gradually speed that up, and we managed to get her path to 2.8 degrees into out. And the big difference was, first of all, in the wrist, in the backswing and downswing, but from the front view here, the tilt. And then when you look at that from the side view, you can see how the path was coming in from the inside, the face was more closed. I'm trying to get that wrist flex to keep the face closed coming down as well, So the paths, I can move that path out to the right if I keep my face closed. So now the key is to put all those pieces together. So we have to try and remember to keep that wrist flex as we go back, as we go down, even into the follow through. If you can swing your driver and you point this wrist down, flex it, that's going to keep that face closed. Tessa's wrist was extended. She came down, steepens the shaft, pulls the path more across. She can't move her hips towards the target without slicing the ball even more right. So she has to kind of move her weight back, doesn't tilt her shoulders, makes the path go even more from out to in. So the keys were to keep the wrist flex for as long as you can in the backswing and downswing and follow through, and at the same time move the hips towards the target to create this tilt as you hit the golf ball. So now we're going to try and put all those pieces together into a swing. Try and expect here big high draw. I'm going to try and exaggerate this a little bit more, so I'm going to keep the wrist flex and feel like I really slide my hips coming down. One key thing, golfers, is to make sure in the backswing, especially with your driver, you get as much turn as you can. That's going to be really important. That's also going to help you swing the club from inside out. So I'm going to backswing, wrist, as much turn as I can. Really slide my hips forward. And yeah, you can see there, big draw just to the left. Struck that ball pretty good. My path there, 3 degrees into out. Now I'll probably just close the face a little bit too much there, but you can see the strike there was actually pretty good. Decent speed, decent distance. So when you're practicing, you want to see the ball curving to the left when you're practicing. Okay, if you're slicing the golf ball, ball's curving to the right, losing distance, your practice should be quite exaggerated. So you've got to exaggerate these movements as you come down with the body, the tilt, the hip sway, and the wrist, to make sure you do the opposite to what your tendencies are in your swing. So hopefully that video helps, golfers. Try and get that ball curving right to left is the key. Left to right, you're going to lose a lot of distance. So if you've got any comments on that, post them in the box below. If you don't already, please follow me on my other social media platforms, and I'll see you again soon for another video.